And here we are at the workbench. I've got the alternator here. I've got my package from many years ago. And you see I've labeled it Elan Alternator Refurb Kit. I bought 2 of them. That's one of the kits. There's a second one for my other car there, but this is for another time. So first thing that I'm going to do is just check what did I buy, because I bought these many years ago and I never opened them up. I just trusted the package. So we'll just find out what have I got. I've got 2 bearings. I've got a big size bearing, a small size bearing, brushes, brushes that will just clip in. This will be nice. This will be nice if I just need to put the brushes in. And I can only assume this to be a voltage regulator. Interestingly, I just noticed one thing. This is probably going to be the replacement for this bugger here, so I can see already where this bugger will line up. So yeah, new brushes, new voltage regulator, new bearings. So this means that my alternator refurb kit does not have new windings. So if my alternator windings are broken, then this won't fix it. So I just have to hedge my bets and hope that the windings are all fine. I'm just gonna have to guess my way onto opening everything up. So I see 3 bolts here, there's another one there, and then there's 4 bolts underneath. So I'm just gonna take these apart and then see how things go. I'm gonna start disassembling everything, and we'll then see how things go. I'm gonna set this on time lapse because taking this apart now, then we'll see how it goes if I have to comment or anything. But most of this video will be a time lapse today. I'm going to just try to find these components in the alternator and swap them. Okay, that's one cover out. So I can see here 2 bolts that line up with those 2. I can see those 2 bolts that line up with that. So yeah, that looks a bit burned. That could be a good sign. That looks worn, so maybe it's just a voltage regulator that in mine doesn't work. So that's the voltage regulator. That's an easy one, and that looks like it's going to have the brushings here. So let's start by removing the voltage regulator. Oh, things are coming out, actually. Lovely. Right, so that is the voltage regulator and the brushes. The brushes looks fine. So I'm gonna take this gasket and put it over here. Well, that looks interestingly gunky. But yeah, that's all I need to do with those. I'm gonna have to separate the armature to get to that bearing, which I'm assuming it's a small one, and then the big one must be on this side. So I'm going to assume that the next step is to take these bolts out to then separate the armature at that line over there. Okay, we're down to the Dremel moment. So here we have a Dremel with a cutting wheel, and what I'm going to do is the usual technique of enlarging the screw hole. And now with the camera lens fixed, well, not fixed, just the moisture removed from it, you can actually see what's going on with a second camera. But there it is. little touch with a Dremel to redo the threads, and now I can get this out of here. Now, in order to separate these two, this is going to be interesting. So, time to spend some time in the library trying to learn how to take one of these apart. And I've done a bit of research, and it turns out that that nut needs to come out. Okay, that's it. Well, that's a lot of dirt that just came out. Right, now there will be one bearing on each side. So I guess that this bearing looks like it's going to be the big one. And the small bearing, it appears as it's going to be the one on this side, which I still need to figure out how to take that out. Right, so I'm gonna remove those 4 bolts to then try to get that bearing, and after that, hopefully, I will have some idea of what I need to do about this bugger here. That's the cover, and there is a bearing there. To remove this bearing, and that seems to be working just fine. So that will be the big bearing. There we go, and it's in. So it turns out that fully pressing wasn't as good as just tapping it slowly. It's a good thing that I realized that something was not quite on center before things went wrong. But here it is. Hopefully that is in focus now, so that's just fine. So I'm just going to give this a clean now. So I'm gonna try to remove this by pushing it out from there. Okay, that's out, and that's the bearing there, so that's good. Okay. Now, in order to press the bearing in, I'm just going to use the whole shell. Okay, so that's slid all the way through, and it spins just fine. No weird noise or anything. So I'm ready to assemble the next bit. So now that these two are together, I'm just going to put back the rest of the armature and then push it together and line up all of these. Right, it's coming out from the other side. That's it, slotted in just fine. All of these came out just fine. It's not about time to put the bearing in. Right, so I've tightened the screw here. This thing now Well, it's I've tightened it by hand, the screw here, so things are now spinning together, but still needs to be further tightened. And I have connected the top and the bottom, I've lined it and pushed it together, which is funny because it now doesn't want to come out apart again. But that's okay, because I don't need to put it back together. So the next thing to do is to put these little rubber housings here. Okay, so those are now aligned, and this is the old rectifier diode. I believe my rectifier diode is broken because, hopefully you can see, but there is a bit of a burn damage there. It looks burned. I'm not sure if it is burned or not. Let's see if I can get it on this camera. So hopefully you can see here the bulging, which I think it's a sign of burn damage. There's also the fact that I took my multimeter to it, and one of the terminals was reading way higher than the other two. So I've decided that I would replace the diode. Now the problem is, you ask a company that supplies parts to rebuild alternators, and they won't have a part cost reference. They won't know what is the correct rectifier diode for this. So I've contacted multiple companies, and I eventually found one company that was helpful, and they asked me for pictures, they asked me for measurements. I sent them pictures with measurements. They sent me a couple of different rectifier diodes that both had this pin alignment, so they both would fit in here. However, the first one that they sent me, which is a general purpose Denso Isuzu part, would have fitted in here, but it was bulkier. It was actually a whole centimeter wider in diameter, which in turn would not fit with this shell. So they went out and they had a look at what they could get me, and they could get me this one, which again fits in perfectly. I don't know what car it is for. I will need to ask them. Hopefully by the time I put this video out I will know, and I'll put it in the description. But the only difference with this to this is effectively the pin here is slightly different, but that's not really a problem. The difference really is the weight. So I've weighted this, and this is 161 grams. And this one is 87 grams, so it's almost, or you could just round it down to half the weight. Now, it may be because newer technologies allow you to make it newer, or maybe it's not rated for the same type of voltages and amperages as that one. However, I got a funny feeling that it will work fine, because, well, rectifier diodes are a really straightforward electrical piece. So, you know, a rectifier diode made 30 years later being half the weight of one from the late 80s is not that surprising. So, it aligns here just fine. So, as you can see, it's now plugged in, and I'm going to tighten all of the connectors. Okay, that's it. So that's that connection now. So the next thing is the voltage regulator and the brushes from Simon P's rebuild kit. So this is the voltage regulator, aligns just fine, and then the thing that is a bit awkward to do is to put the brushes because of the fact that they got their own springs. So the brushes have their own springs, they are trying to push everything apart, and then I just need to line everything up together. And I'm going to start by tightening up the two screws for the brushes. So now just need to line up the voltage regulator with everything else. And now hopefully the two long screws will just connect and be already aligned. So everything is going a bit snug, but I'm not putting a lot of pressure on anything because, you know, there's no moving part. The only moving part is already protected with the bearings, so there shouldn't be a need to tighten everything very tight. Now, one thing probably I should have put the screws around here. So what are we missing? We are missing these three nuts, which are the ones from here, plus this cover. Now, I don't remember exactly how this goes, but it looks like it goes like this, actually. That just pretty much answered itself, the question. So this will go first, this will align everything together, and then finally, yeah, there you go. So I've got 3 nuts from here, and then I've got the 3 nuts from here, which are one with a spacer like this to hold the plastic bit together, and then the final one which goes in once it's back in the car. So let's just tighten all of this together now. Just tighten by hand, that's more than enough. And the final bit here. So the only thing missing now is just to tighten this nut so that it won't spin with no reason. So let's put this in the vise and tighten that. Yeah, that's tight. That's definitely tight. Well, that's the Alternator refurbished now. So, new voltage regulator, new brushes, not new brushes, yes, new brushes, and a new diode rectifier diode bridge, and 2 new bearings. So 4 of these bits were from Simon P's kit. The rectifier diode, I had to source a brand new one, no one knew what it was, but we'll see if this works. I will chase it back and put it on the comments or in the description where it came from, so you know how to refurbish yours. And yeah, roughly £40 worth of bits going into there. A brand new alternator from SJS at the moment that I'm recording this is £100 plus VAT plus postage. So we are probably looking at £130–140 to receive an alternator from them, which may or may not be refurbished. I think they are actually brand new. But instead of spending £130, I am spending about £40, and everything is brand new, and I know it's brand new because I just put it there. You could see how shiny the bits were. So this goes back in the car. Fingers crossed it works, and my car will be back on the road before the end of January. So thank you for watching. I hope you learned a thing or two. I hope this helps you maintain your vehicle, and I will see you in the next video.